The emergency signal burst across the galaxy like a shockwave, reaching every inhabited system within hours. On monitoring stations, communication hubs, and diplomatic centers, the same urgent message played in hundreds of different languages. The Galactic Federation was calling for an immediate peace summit on Kepler Station, the neutral meeting point that floated in the empty space between major civilizations. Captain Jake Murphy sat in his command chair aboard the Federation monitoring station, watching the responses flood in. His fingers drummed against the armrest as species after species confirmed their attendance. The blue-skinned Villani were the first to respond, their diplomatic ships already changing course toward Kepler Station. The warrior race known as the Krathari sent word that their battle fleet would escort their negotiators. Even the mysterious ethereals, who rarely spoke to other species, transmitted their acceptance. Jake had been monitoring galactic communications for 12 years, and he had never seen such a fast response to any Federation call. This was different. This was about survival. The threat was real and growing. Ancient machines called the Devourers had awakened in the outer rim of the galaxy. Nobody knew where they came from or why they had been sleeping for thousands of years. What everyone knew was simple and terrifying. They consumed everything. Planets, ships, space stations, even stars. They turned matter into energy, and used that energy to build more of themselves. The first reports came from mining colonies that simply vanished. Then entire systems went dark. Scout ships sent to investigate never returned. The pattern was always the same. First, all communications stopped. Then when other ships arrived to check, they found nothing but empty space where worlds used to be. Jake watched his screens as more confirmations arrived. The Zephyrian merchant fleets were redirecting their trade routes to attend. The insectoid hive mothers were sending their greatest queens. Even the gas giant dwellers called the Whispers were coming, despite rarely leaving their atmospheric homes. But one section of his display remained stubbornly quiet. The human sectors showed no response at all. Jake frowned and checked his equipment. The signal had definitely reached human space. Earth, Mars, the outer colonies, even the frontier settlements should have received the transmission. But from humanity's vast territory, stretching across dozens of star systems, came only silence. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Mary Johnson, appeared at his shoulder. She was studying the same displays with growing concern. "Sir, should we send the message again to human space?" she asked. "Maybe their communication networks are having problems." Jake shook his head. "Human communications are some of the most reliable in the galaxy. They would have received it." He paused, thinking. "Send a direct inquiry to Earth Command. Ask if they need the transmission repeated." Mary nodded and moved to her station. Jake watched her fingers dance across the controls, sending a targeted message directly to humanity's capital world. They waited. Minutes passed, then an hour. No response came. Ambassador Quinlar, the Villani diplomat stationed on their monitoring post, approached Jake's chair. Her large dark eyes showed the worry that her species always felt when patterns broke. The Villani were creatures of order and predictability. Unexpected behavior made them nervous. "Captain Murphy," she said in her musical voice, "this silence from humanity is most unusual. In all recorded history, humans have never failed to respond to a Federation emergency call." Jake knew she was right. Humans were notorious for getting involved in galactic affairs. They traded with everyone, explored everywhere, and had opinions about everything. Human diplomats, merchants, soldiers, and adventurers could be found in every corner of civilized space. For them to ignore something this important was completely out of character. "Maybe they're dealing with the Devourer threat on their own," Jake suggested, though he didn't sound convinced. Humans sometimes prefer to handle things independently. Quinlar's head tilted in the way her people showed disagreement. "The Devourers have consumed 17 star systems, Captain. No single species can face such a threat alone. Even humanity, with all their stubbornness and pride, would recognize this." Over the next 2 days, the responses kept coming. Every major civilization in the galaxy was sending representatives to Kepler Station. The meeting would be the largest gathering in galactic history. Military commanders, diplomats, scientists, and leaders were all traveling to the neutral station to discuss how they could work together against the ancient machines. But still, humanity remained silent. Jake found himself staring at the human sectors on his star map more and more often. The silence felt wrong. It felt ominous. Human space wasn't empty. Long-range sensors still detected ships moving between systems, colonies operating normally, and all the usual signs of a thriving civilization. They were there. They were active, but they weren't talking. On the third day, Jake received a personal message from his old friend Commander Lisa Blake. She was stationed on Kepler Station as a human liaison, one of the few humans who worked directly with the Federation. Her message was brief and puzzling. "Jake, I'm the only human here. No ships from home, no messages from Earth Command, nothing. I don't know what's happening, but I'm scared. The other species are starting to ask questions I can't answer. Some are even suggesting that maybe humanity has already fallen to the Devourers. Please tell me you know something I don't." Jake stared at the message for a long time. Lisa was tough and experienced. For her to admit being scared meant the situation was worse than he thought. He turned to look at the main display where hundreds of ships were now converging on Kepler Station. Representatives from across the galaxy were coming together to face the greatest threat their civilizations had ever encountered. They would share technology, coordinate military strategies, and pool their resources to fight the ancient enemy. But humanity, one of the most influential and widespread species in the galaxy, was nowhere to be seen. As Jake watched the ships gather, a cold feeling settled in his stomach. Either humanity was facing something so terrible that they couldn't spare anyone for the summit, or they knew something that the rest of the galaxy didn't. Neither possibility was comforting. The Peace Summit would begin in 3 days. The greatest minds and leaders in the galaxy would gather to plan their defense against the Devourers, but they would do it without humanity, and nobody could understand why. Jake Murphy continued to watch his silent screens, wondering if humanity's absence would doom them all, or if there was something more to their mysterious silence than anyone could imagine. Kepler Station buzzed with activity like never before in its 50-year history. The massive space station built in the neutral zone between major civilizations was designed to host diplomatic meetings. But it had never seen anything like this gathering. Ships from hundreds of worlds filled the surrounding space. Sleek Volani cruisers with their flowing organic designs floated alongside the brutal angular warships of the Krathari Empire. Zephyrian trade vessels heavy with cargo and supplies shared docking bays with the crystalline vessels of the silicon mines. Even the rarely seen ethereals had come, their ships looking like captured starlight against the black of space. Commander Lisa Blake stood in the main observation deck, watching the endless stream of arrivals. She had been stationed on Kepler Station for 3 years as humanity's liaison to the Federation. It was supposed to be a quiet posting, handling minor trade disputes and cultural exchanges. Now she found herself as the only human representative at the most important gathering in galactic history. Her reflection stared back from the transparent aluminum window. Brown hair pulled back in a regulation ponytail, tired green eyes, and the blue uniform of the Federation Diplomatic Corps. She looked exactly like what she was, a middle-rank officer who was suddenly in way over her head. Behind her, the great assembly hall filled with delegates from across the galaxy. The hall was enormous, built to accommodate the different environmental needs of dozens of species. Atmospheric fields separated different sections, allowing oxygen breathers to sit near methane breathers, and aquatic species to participate from their water-filled chambers. Ambassador Quinlar approached Lisa's position. The Volani diplomat moved with the flowing grace of her people, her blue skin reflecting the lights from the various ships outside. "Commander Blake," Quinlar said, her voice carrying the musical quality that made Volani such effective negotiators. "The session will begin shortly. Have you received any word from your government?" Lisa shook her head, trying to hide her frustration and growing fear. "Nothing. I've sent dozens of messages to Earth Command, to Colonial Administration, even to the independent settlements. No one is responding." Quinlar's large eyes showed sympathy. "This is most troubling. Humanity has never been absent from such an important gathering." They walked together toward the assembly hall. Lisa took her place at the human delegation table, a large surface designed to accommodate a full diplomatic team. Instead, she sat alone, with empty chairs surrounding her like silent accusations. The session began with Supreme Chancellor Vex Corral of the Krathari Empire taking the central speaking platform. The Krathari were 7 feet tall, covered in thick scales, with glowing red eyes that could intimidate most species. Vex Corral's voice boomed across the hall. Fellow beings of the galaxy, he began, we face an enemy unlike any in recorded history. The ancient machines called Devourers have awakened. They have already consumed 17 star systems, including the Outer Reach colonies and the entire Terminus sector. A wave of shocked whispers ran through the assembly. Some species were hearing the full extent of the threat for the first time. Dr. Cale Vorth, an insectoid Zephyrian with specialized knowledge of ancient technology, clicked forward to the platform. His translator converted his complex clicking language into standard galactic. Our analysis of the Devourer machines shows technology far beyond our current understanding, he said. They convert matter directly into energy, then use that energy to replicate themselves. Each system they consume makes them stronger and more numerous. General Thekmorin of the Krathari military took the platform next. His battle-scarred carapace told the story of countless conflicts. Our war fleets stand ready, he declared. The Krathari Empire offers 200 battle cruisers and 500 fighter squadrons to the defense effort. Ambassador Sil Wanderer of the Vellani Republic responded with her own offer. The Vellani pledge our advanced shielding technology and our finest diplomatic minds to coordinate the alliance. One by one, each species presented their contributions to the growing defense force. The Zephyrians offered their vast merchant fleet to supply the war effort. The Silicon Mines provided their computational abilities for strategy and analysis. Even the mysterious Ethereals spoke, promising their energy manipulation technologies. Lisa watched it all happen around her, feeling more isolated with each passing moment. Every species had something to offer, some way to contribute to the galaxy's defense. But she couldn't speak for humanity. She didn't know what her people were planning, or if they were planning anything at all. As the session continued, she began to notice something troubling. Delegates were starting to look at her empty table. Whispered conversations in a dozen languages filled the spaces between speeches. She didn't need a translator to know what they were discussing. Where were the humans? During a break in the formal proceedings, several delegates approached her directly. Commander Velthar of the Krathari Navy towered over her table. "Human Blake," he said in his people's direct manner, "your species commands respect throughout the galaxy. Your absence from these proceedings is noted and questioned." Lisa stood, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "I'm here representing humanity, Commander Velthar." "One human does not represent the might of your species," he replied. "Where are your battle fleets? Where are your famous generals and admirals? Where is the human response to this threat?" Before Lisa could answer, Ambassador Quinlar intervened smoothly. "Perhaps humanity is coordinating their response through different channels. They have always been independent in their decision-making." But even as she defended humanity's absence, Lisa could see the doubt in Quinlar's large eyes. The explanation sounded weak even to friendly ears. As the day wore on, the questions became more direct and more troubling. Dr. Kyle Vorth approached during another break, his compound eyes glittering with scientific curiosity and growing concern. "Commander Blake, I have been analyzing communication patterns across the galaxy," he said, his translated voice carrying unusual urgency. "Human space shows normal internal traffic, ships moving, colonies operating, trade continuing. But external communications have dropped to nearly zero. This is not normal human behavior." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. "What are you suggesting, Doctor?" "I am suggesting that either humanity is facing some internal crisis that prevents them from responding to external threats, or—" He paused, his mandibles clicking nervously. "Or what? Or they are already gone. The Devourers may have reached human space first. The silence may be the silence of extinction." The word hung in the air between them like a death sentence. Around the Great Hall, other delegates continued their planning and negotiating. But Lisa felt as if the galaxy had suddenly become a much darker and more dangerous place. That evening, alone in her quarters, Lisa stared out at the vast gathering of ships. Tomorrow, the Alliance would begin coordinating their military response to the Devourer threat. They would share technologies, plan strategies, and prepare for war, but they would do it all without knowing whether humanity was a potential ally or already a casualty. And Lisa had no way to find out which. The second day of the Peace Summit brought more questions than answers about humanity's mysterious absence. In the Grand Assembly Hall, Delegates from across the galaxy continued their discussions about forming a unified defense against the Devourers. But increasingly those discussions kept returning to the same troubling topic. Where were the humans? Dr. Kaelvorth of the Zephyrian Research Institute had spent the night analyzing everything he could find about human behavior patterns. His compound eyes glowed with the intensity that came when his species focused on a particularly complex problem. He approached the central speaking platform with data displays floating around him like electronic butterflies. "Fellow beings," he began, his clicking voice translated into standard galactic. "I have prepared an analysis of humanity's current silence in context with their historical behavior." The hall grew quiet. Even species that usually paid little attention to academic presentations turned their various forms of sensory organs toward the insectoid scientist. "Humans are the most communicative species in known space," Dr. Kaelvorth continued. "Their networks carry more data traffic than any other civilization. They maintain contact with settlements across 47 star systems. They trade with everyone, explore everything, and involve themselves in conflicts that don't even concern them directly." Ambassador Syl Wanderer of the Vallani nodded her blue head in agreement. "This assessment matches our diplomatic records. Humanity has participated in every major galactic crisis for the past century." "Exactly," Dr. Kaelvorth clicked excitedly. "During the Outer Ring trade wars, humans were the first to offer mediation. When the Silicon Mine Collective faced internal conflict, human negotiators helped resolve the crisis. Even during the ethereal isolation period, humans kept trying to maintain communication." General Thekmoran of the Krithari stood from his position. The scarred warrior's red eyes glowed with suspicion. "What is your conclusion, scientist? Speak plainly." Dr. Kaelvorth's mandibles moved nervously. "This silence is completely unprecedented. It goes against everything we know about human nature. There are only 3 possible explanations." The hall became even quieter. Commander Lisa Blake, sitting alone at her empty table, felt every alien eye in the room focusing on her position. "First possibility," Dr. Kaelvorth continued, "humanity is facing an internal crisis so severe that they cannot spare resources for external affairs. Civil war, plague, or technological disaster." Murmurs of concern rippled through the assembly. Several species had experienced such crises and understood how they could paralyze a civilization. Second possibility, humanity knows something about the Devourer threat that we do not. Their silence is part of some strategy we cannot understand. This possibility created more discussion. The ethereals, speaking through their energy-based communication system, suggested that humans were known for unconventional thinking. Perhaps their absence was itself a form of participation. Third possibility, Dr. Kaelvorth said, and his voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "The Devourers have already reached human space. The silence is the silence of extinction." The word extinction echoed through the hall like a physical blow. Commander Lisa Blake felt her hands clench into fists. The idea that her entire species might be gone was too horrible to consider, but the logic was undeniable. General Thekmoran rose again, his massive form radiating the controlled aggression of his species. "If humanity has fallen, then the Devourers are closer than we thought. Human space sits between several major shipping routes. If they control those systems, they can cut off our supply lines and attack our rear positions." The military implications sent a wave of panic through the assembly. Admiral Nex Cloudswimmer of the Whisper Fleet, speaking from her water-filled chamber, added her concerns through her atmospheric translator. "Our long-range sensors detect no Devourer activity in human space," she said in her liquid voice. "But the machines are known to be difficult to detect until they begin their consumption process." Dr. Kaelvorth activated another display showing galactic shipping routes. "If the Devourers control human space, they can strike at any of our worlds while we are gathered here planning our defense." The discussion that followed was heated and confused. Some species wanted to send scout fleets immediately to human space to investigate. Others argued that dividing their forces before they understood the threat was exactly what the Devourers would want. During a break in the formal session, Lisa found herself surrounded by curious and concerned delegates. The questions came from all directions. "Commander Blake, when did you last receive communication from Earth?" asked Captain Zil Brightstar of the Vallani Exploration Fleet. "Has humanity ever gone completely silent before?" wondered Professor Keck's analyzer of the Silicon Mind Collective. Do your people have secret protocols for dealing with existential threats? Pressed General Thekmarine. Lisa tried to answer as best she could, but the truth was that she knew as little as anyone else. Her last communication from Earth Command had been routine administrative messages 3 weeks ago. Nothing about the Devourer threat, nothing about any special protocols, nothing that explained the current silence. But as the day continued, something strange began to happen. Lisa started receiving fragmentary messages on her personal communication device. They weren't official transmissions from Earth Command or Colonial Administration. They were brief cryptic messages from individual human ships and settlements. The first message came from Captain Bob Lewis of the merchant vessel Star Trader. Maintain communication silence. Trust the plan. An hour later, another message arrived from Dr. Ellen Price at the research station on Kepler's Edge. Remember the collector incident. Same protocol applies. More messages trickled in throughout the day. None of them explained what was happening. But they all carried the same basic theme. The silence was intentional, it was coordinated, and there was a plan. Lisa tried to research what the collector incident might refer to, but her access to classified human databases was limited from Kepler Station. She knew that the collectors were an ancient race that had vanished mysteriously thousands of years ago, but she didn't know why that would be relevant to the current situation. As evening approached and the formal sessions ended for the day, Lisa found herself walking the observation deck alone. Outside the transparent walls, the largest fleet in galactic history continued to grow as more ships arrived for the summit. Soon these vessels would disperse across the galaxy to implement whatever defense strategy the Alliance decided on. But without humanity's participation, any defense would have a massive gap. Human space covered too much territory and controlled too many crucial resources to be ignored. Ambassador Quinn Lard joined Lisa at the observation deck. The Villani diplomat's presence was comforting, even though Lisa could see the worry in her large, dark eyes. The fragmentary messages you've been receiving, Quinn Lard said quietly. They suggest your people are not gone. Lisa nodded. They're definitely out there, but why won't they communicate officially? Why leave me here alone to represent our entire species? Perhaps, Quinn Lard said thoughtfully, they are protecting something more important than appearances. Humans have always been willing to accept misunderstanding in service of a greater goal. Lisa hoped her friend was right, but as she watched the alien fleets preparing for a war that might already be lost, she couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's silence was about to have consequences that nobody could predict. Lisa Blake couldn't sleep. The cryptic messages from human ships and settlements kept playing in her mind as she sat in her quarters aboard Kepler Station. Outside her window, the massive gathering of alien fleets continued their preparations for war against the Devourers. But inside her room, she studied every fragment of information she had received, trying to piece together the puzzle of humanity's silence. The latest message had come from Agent Kate Williams, someone Lisa had never heard of before. It was even more mysterious than the others. Project Silent Guardian active. Maintain current position. Do not break cover under any circumstances. Project Silent Guardian? Lisa had no idea what that meant, but the tone suggested it was something important and highly classified. She began cross-referencing the names and ships that had sent her messages, looking for any pattern that might explain what was happening. As the third day of the summit began, Lisa noticed something that made her stomach twist with anxiety. The alien delegates had stopped asking her direct questions about humanity's absence. Instead, they spoke around her as if she wasn't there. The change in behavior was subtle but unmistakable. They had given up expecting answers from her. During the morning session, General Thekmarine announced that Krathari scout ships had detected unusual energy readings near the edge of human space. The readings were similar to Devourer signatures, but they weren't moving in the expected consumption pattern. Our scouts report strange activities in the frontier sector, the general said, his red eyes glowing with concern. Energy patterns consistent with Devourer technology, but the machines appear to be dormant or inactive. Dr. Kailvorth's compound eyes glittered with scientific interest. Dormant Devourer machines? That is unprecedented in all our records. These machines do not rest or pause. They consume continuously until no matter remains. Ambassador Syl Wanderer leaned forward in her seat. Unless they have already consumed everything in that region. Perhaps human space has already fallen, and the machines are processing the material. The discussion that followed filled Lisa with dread. Military experts from various species began analyzing how long it would take the Devourers to fully process the resources of human space. Their estimates ranged from months to years, but they all agreed on one terrible point. If the machines were already in human territory, they would eventually emerge stronger than ever. But something about the reports didn't make sense to Lisa. If the Devourers had consumed human space, where were the refugees? Where were the distress calls? Where were the scattered survivor ships that always escaped when civilizations fell? During a break, Lisa approached Dr. Kaelvorth directly. The insectoid scientist was studying star charts and energy readings, his forearms moving independently as he manipulated data displays. "Doctor," Lisa said carefully, "you mentioned that the energy signatures were dormant. In all your research on the Devourers, have you ever recorded them going inactive?" His mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Never. The machines are driven by a single imperative: consume and replicate. They do not stop, they do not rest, they do not pause for any reason we can understand." "Then what could explain the readings your scouts detected?" Dr. Kaelvorth's compound eyes focused on her with sudden intensity. "Either the machines are not actually Devourers, or something has happened that we have never seen before. Something that can force the ancient machines to become dormant." Lisa felt a chill of possibility. What could make them dormant? Unknown. But theoretically, if someone understood their technology well enough, it might be possible to disable them temporarily. However, such knowledge would require years of study and access to intact Devourer technology. Lisa's mind raced. The cryptic messages, the references to the Collector incident, the coordinated silence across all of human space. What if humanity wasn't hiding from the Devourers? What if they were fighting them? That evening, Lisa received the most detailed message yet. It came from Captain Ben Carter, commanding officer of the exploration vessel Deep Survey. The message was longer than the others and included encrypted data files. "Commander Blake, if you are receiving this, the summit must be proceeding as expected. You cannot break silence yet, but you need to understand what we're doing. 3 years ago, my ship encountered the first Devourer scout in the Outer Reach. Instead of reporting it immediately, we captured it." Lisa's hands trembled as she read the rest of the message. Captain Carter's ship had spent months studying the captured Devourer machine, learning how it functioned, how it communicated with others of its kind, and most importantly, how it could be stopped. The message continued. "We discovered that the Devourers are attracted to large-scale electromagnetic activity. Every time civilizations gather their fleets or hold major communications events, the machines detect the activity and move toward it. The bigger the gathering, the faster they come." Lisa felt her blood turn to ice. The Peace Summit, with its thousands of ships and massive communication arrays, would be like a beacon to the Devourer fleet. Dr. Steve Harrison developed a way to create interference fields that disrupt their navigation systems, the message went on. Colonel Amy Rodriguez figured out how to use their own technology against them. But it only works if they don't know we're coming. That's why we had to maintain complete communication silence. The final part of the message made Lisa's legs weak. "The main Devourer fleet is already on its way to your position. Our calculations show they will arrive at Kepler Station in approximately 18 hours. Humanity has spent 3 years preparing for this fight, but we had to let the galaxy think we were gone to make it work. Do not break silence until our ships arrive. Trust the plan." Lisa stared at the message for a long time, her mind struggling to process the implications. Humanity hadn't abandoned the galaxy or fallen to the Devourers. They had been preparing for the most important battle in galactic history, and they had done it in complete silence to avoid alerting the enemy. But that meant the Peace Summit, with all its grand plans and alliance building, was actually dooming everyone who attended it. The gathering that was supposed to save the galaxy was acting as bait for the ancient machines. Lisa looked out her window at the thousands of ships surrounding Kepler Station. Delegates from hundreds of species were sleeping peacefully, believing they were safe while they planned their defense against a distant threat. They had no idea that the threat was racing toward them through space, drawn by their own attempts to organize a defense. And in 18 hours, they would find out if humanity's silent plan could save them all. Lisa Blake had never felt so alone in her life. She stood in the main observation deck of Kepler Station, watching the peaceful gathering of ships from across the galaxy, knowing that in a few hours, they would all be fighting for their lives. The weight of humanity's secret pressed down on her like a physical force. She couldn't warn them. Captain Carter's message had been clear about that. Breaking communication silence too early would alert the Devourer fleet and ruin 3 years of careful preparation. But watching thousands of beings go about their normal routines, unaware of the approaching danger, felt like torture. The morning session of the summit began with more strategic planning. General Thek Morin presented detailed battle formations for the combined fleet. Ambassador Syl Wanderer discussed supply line coordination. Dr. Kaelvorth shared his latest analysis of Devourer technology. All of it felt surreal to Lisa, like watching people plan a picnic while a hurricane approached. But as the hours passed, she began to notice subtle changes in the long-range sensor readings. The technicians monitoring deep space reported unusual energy fluctuations in several sectors surrounding Kepler Station. The readings were faint and scattered, too weak to be identified as hostile activity. Dr. Kaelvorth approached Lisa during a break, his compound eyes glittering with concern. "Commander Blake, these energy readings are troubling. They match Devourer signatures, but they're appearing in a pattern we've never seen before." Lisa forced herself to remain calm. "What kind of pattern?" "They're surrounding us, as if something very large is approaching from multiple directions simultaneously." He paused, his mandibles clicking nervously. "But there's something else. Some of the readings don't match standard Devourer signatures. They're different somehow." Before Lisa could respond, alarms began sounding throughout Kepler Station. The deep space monitoring systems had detected massive energy signatures dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. In the main assembly hall, panic erupted as species representatives realized they were under attack. General Thek Morin roared orders to his fleet commanders, while Ambassador Syl Wanderer tried to coordinate evacuation procedures. The massive gathering that was supposed to plan the galaxy's defense had suddenly become the target of the very threat they were trying to fight. Lisa ran to the observation deck and felt her heart stop. Emerging from the darkness of space came ships unlike anything she had ever seen. They were geometric impossibilities, their surfaces shifting between dimensions, consuming light itself. The Devourer fleet had arrived, but something was wrong. The ancient machines weren't moving in their usual consumption pattern. Instead of spreading out to surround and devour everything in the system, they seemed to be confused, their movements erratic and uncertain. That's when Lisa saw them. Human ships began appearing throughout the system, but not from the directions anyone expected. They emerged from behind asteroids, from the shadows of gas giant moons, from sensor blind spots that nobody knew existed. They had been hiding in the system for hours, waiting. Captain Rickstone's stealth flotilla appeared first, their ships running completely silent until the moment they opened fire. Their weapons weren't the standard energy blasts that most species used. Instead, they fired specialized projectiles that seemed to disrupt the Devourer ship's dimensional shifting abilities. Commander Helen Price's assault group dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their ships equipped with the mysterious interference fields that Captain Carter's message had mentioned. Wherever her ships moved, the Devourer machines seemed to lose coordination, their movements becoming sluggish and confused. The largest surprise came when Admiral Paul Grant's main fleet arrived. Unlike every other military force in galactic history, they came in complete communication silence. Their coordination was perfect, but they weren't using any radio signals or data, transmissions that the Devourers could detect or disrupt. Lisa watched in amazement as the human fleet executed maneuvers that seemed impossible without constant communication. Ships moved in perfect synchronization, timing their attacks with precision that suggested months or years of practice. They had trained for this exact battle. Commander Tony Shaw led boarding parties that launched from stealth transports, somehow penetrating the Devourer ship's dimensional barriers. Lieutenant Sarah Kim piloted fighters equipped with weapons that Lisa had never seen before, devices that seemed to turn the ancient machine's own technology against them. In the assembly hall, the alien delegates watched the battle in shocked silence. This wasn't the desperate last stand they had expected. This was a carefully planned military operation executed by a species that had been preparing for this exact moment. Ambassador Quinn Lar approached Lisa's position, her large eyes wide with wonder and confusion. "Commander Blake, how is this possible? How long has humanity been preparing for this battle?" Lisa finally felt free to speak. 3 years. Ever since Captain Carter's ship encountered the first Devourer scout. Humanity has spent 3 years studying their technology, developing countermeasures and planning this engagement. But why the silence? "Why let us believe you were gone or defeated?" Lisa gestured toward the battle raging outside. "Because the Devourers are attracted to large-scale electromagnetic activity. Every message we could have sent, every fleet movement we could have made, would have drawn them to us sooner and in greater numbers. The only way to fight them was to make them think we were helpless while we prepared our trap." Dr. Kyle Vorth joined them, his scientific mind racing to understand what he was witnessing. The interference fields, the specialized weapons, the dimensional disruption technology. Your species has spent 3 years reverse engineering Devourer technology. "More than that," Lisa said, remembering Captain Carter's message. "We learned how they think, how they hunt, how they coordinate, and we learned how to turn their own strengths against them." The battle continued for hours, but the outcome became clear within the first 30 minutes. The Devourer fleet, expecting to find confused and divided civilizations, instead encountered a unified human force that understood their weaknesses better than they understood themselves. As the last of the ancient machines were disabled or destroyed, the human fleet finally broke their communication silence. Messages poured in from across human space, explaining the 3-year operation that had led to this moment. Admiral Paul Grant's voice filled the assembly hall as he addressed the gathered representatives. "Citizens of the galaxy, humanity apologizes for our deception. We know our silence caused fear and confusion. But the Devourers could only be defeated through patience, preparation, and the willingness to be misunderstood for the greater good." General Thek Morin, the scarred Krithari warrior, stood slowly from his position. His red eyes glowed not with anger, but with something Lisa had never seen from his species before. "Respect. Humans," he said in his deep, rumbling voice. "Your species has shown honor beyond measure. You accepted the galaxy's suspicion and fear to protect us all. The Krithari Empire owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid." Similar acknowledgments came from every species represented at the summit. The Villani praised humanity's diplomatic wisdom in choosing silence over glory. The Zephyrians marveled at the long-term strategic thinking required for such an operation. Even the mysterious ethereals expressed their admiration for humanity's sacrifice. But Lisa knew the truth was more complex than that. As she watched the human fleet regrouping after their victory, she realized that humanity's silence hadn't just been about tactics or strategy. It had been about trust, the trust that other species would continue hoping for peace even when humanity seemed to have abandoned them. The Devourer threat was ended, at least for now. But the real victory was something deeper. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the greatest act of friendship was knowing when not to speak, and that humanity's silence had been their loudest declaration of loyalty to the galactic community. As the Peace Summit transformed from a planning session into a celebration, Lisa finally understood why humanity had chosen to bear the galaxy's suspicion alone. Some battles could only be won by those willing to fight them in the shadows, misunderstood and unappreciated, until the moment when their sacrifice saved everyone.